Today, we're going to talk about one of the most incredible political experiments in modern history, the framing of the Indian Constitution.
So just look at this moment, the signing of a nation's soul, its foundational text. This document took nearly 3 whole years of nonstop, intense debate to create, and you have to ask yourself, why? Why did it take so long? What was going on that was so complicated that it ended up producing the longest constitution in the entire world?
Well, to really get the answer, we have to go right back to the beginning. And that beginning, it was a time of unbelievable hope, but also of just absolute, unimaginable horror.
I mean, this is the moment, right? Jawaharlal Nehru's famous Tryst with Destiny speech on the eve of independence. You can almost feel the electricity in the air, the pure optimism. A struggle that lasted for centuries was finally over. A new nation was born, and it was filled with these incredible dreams of life and freedom.
But that amazing hope crashed headfirst into a brutal, horrifying reality. The year leading up to independence wasn't some peaceful transition. No way. It started with the Great Calcutta Killings and then just spiraled into a year of endless rioting. The partition of India itself unleashed massacres on a scale that's hard to even comprehend, creating millions of refugees and a constant, terrifying fear of sudden, violent death.
And this is the single most important thing to get. The people who were given the job of writing a constitution for a free, democratic India, they were doing it while their country was literally burning around them. These images of destruction weren't something they saw in a newspaper. This was their reality, a constant haunting presence in the background of every single debate.
And believe it or not, the violence of partition was just the first of a whole series of what looked like impossible challenges. The real task was much bigger. It was about forging a single nation out of a deeply, deeply divided land.
Okay, just try to picture this. A full third of the subcontinent wasn't even technically British India. It was this crazy patchwork of hundreds of princely states. And now, with the British leaving, many of their rulers, the Nawabs and Maharajas, suddenly started getting, quote, wild dreams of independent power. So how on earth do you convince all of them to give up that dream and join this brand new, very uncertain experiment called India? And then, on top of all those political divisions, you had the social ones. India wasn't just big and diverse. It was a society that was literally built on centuries of hierarchy, sliced up by caste and by religion. So the framers had to invent a single democratic blueprint for a culture that had, for pretty much its entire history, been the exact opposite of that.
So, faced with all of these completely impossible challenges, who were the people who were actually brave enough to take this on? It's time to meet the nation's architects, the Constituent Assembly.
And here they are. Now, it's true, the Congress Party was the major player here. But it is a huge mistake to think this was a room with just one opinion. Inside the Congress Party itself, you had socialists arguing with defenders of landlords. You had hardcore secularists sitting next to people with ties to religious parties. The thing is, they had spent decades learning how to debate their differences during the freedom struggle, and they brought that exact same spirit of argument right into this assembly.
And in that massive assembly of 300 members, 6 people were absolutely crucial, and they each played a very specific role. You had Nehru, the visionary, the one who painted the big picture. Then you had Vallabhbhai Patel, the ultimate pragmatist, working tirelessly behind the scenes to get everyone on the same page. Rajendra Prasad was the president, the calm center of the storm, who guided the debate so brilliantly. And then there was B.R. Ambedkar. He was actually a former critic of the Congress, but he became the chairman of the drafting committee, and his brilliance, along with the razor-sharp legal minds of K.M. Munshi and A.K. Iyer, was just indispensable.
And they weren't working in a vacuum. These leaders were backed up by 2 absolutely vital civil servants. B.N. Rao, who did all the homework, studying constitutions from all over the world, and S.N. Mukherjee, who had this amazing gift for taking really complicated legal ideas and putting them into crystal clear language.
So, we've got the people and we've got the problems. Now let's look at the process itself, because when you see how this vision for India was actually hammered out, the sheer scale of it is it's staggering.
So it all started with 300 members, who took almost 3 full years to get the job done.
Meeting for 165 days spread out over 11 incredibly intense sessions.
And this just says it all. The printed records of what they said, what they argued about, it fills 11 giant volumes. Every single idea was debated and recorded for history.
And the guiding star for this whole epic journey was something called the Objectives Resolution, which was introduced by Nehru. Think of it as the mission statement. It was a promise to every future citizen of India that they would have justice, equality, and freedom. And crucially, it promised special protections for minorities and other marginalized groups. This became the moral compass for every single decision that followed. And what's really cool is that this wasn't some process happening behind closed doors. Not at all. The debates were reported in the newspapers every day. Proposals were argued about in public. The people of India were actually invited to send in their opinions. And they did. Minority groups pushed for safeguards. Dalits demanded a real end to caste oppression. All of this public pressure had a direct impact on the conversations happening inside that assembly hall.
So where did all of this lead? All the history, all the violence, all the hopes and debates, it all culminated in one remarkable thing: the world's longest constitution. And its incredible length wasn't some accident. It was a totally necessary solution.
You know, the best way to think about the Indian Constitution isn't by its number of articles, it's by its purpose. It was, at its heart, an incredibly elaborate, carefully crafted design for unity, made specifically to hold a huge, diverse, and fractured country together in one shared political dream.
And this, right here, is the most important thing to take away from all of this. The Constitution's famous length and complexity, they're not a flaw, they are a feature. Every single clause, every single article, is a direct answer to a specific fear, a specific historical wound that needed to be healed, or a democratic dream that needed to be built from scratch.
It was a document born out of pure chaos, a blueprint designed to unite a deeply divided people. And that, of course, brings us to the biggest question of all. More than 75 years later, with all the challenges India faces today, is that grand, audacious experiment still working? That's the question we're all left with.